And welcome to Hannity. Wow, what a news night. Panic is in the air. Biden's poll numbers have never been lower, and prices, well, sadly, they continue to rise. Backbreaking inflation up 20% under Joe Biden and this administration, crushing you and your families. Now, Biden's base is crumbling. Americans are suffering. And you see that African Americans, Hispanic Americans, younger voters, part of the Democratic coalition, they're leaving Joe Biden and going right to Donald Trump. They're desperately needing to make up ground. Well, Biden has now officially agreed to debate Donald Trump. How convenient. In a heavily edited, kind of cringeworthy video posted to social media, Biden put on a brave face, and he did his very, very best tough guy, Dirty Harry impersonation. Never thought I'd see it this bad. Take a look.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Wow, that just made my day. Donald Trump has already agreed to 3 debates today, and he wants to do more. Well, not only we can double make your day, Joe. Why stop at 2? Historically, by the way, it's always been 3 debates, presidential debates, with the exception 2020. Why? Because of COVID. So Joe, Mr. Make My Day tough guy, why not the usual 3? Or how about 4? Or how about 1 a month until the election? You might have noticed, by the way, there were 5 separate edits in that 13-second video. I don't know, did Joe need assistance every 2.6 seconds? One can wonder. On X, one user compared the video, this is funny, to a claymation film. Another said that the jump cuts could cause a seizure. Wow. And as for Biden's generous offer to participate in 2 debates, it came with a ton of conditions, none of them mentioned during his 13-second Dirty Harry tough guy routine. Let's be clear. Joe Biden and the media mob, they don't get to collude and dictate all the terms of the debates, but that won't stop Joe and the mob from trying. Now, first, Mr. Make My Day Joe is demanding no audience. Apparently, Joe gets easily scared and likely gets disoriented from crowd noise, which would be new to him since he never gets a large crowd at any of his events, his short events. Now, 2, Biden wants third-party candidates and independents banned from the stage, including RFK Jr. Well, as of now, in order to debate third-party candidates, they need to be polling at 15%, qualify in enough states to get the Electoral College votes that are needed, but that should be negotiable. 3, Joe wants mics to be muted after the allotted speaking time expires, so no back and forth. I guess it's just too confusing for Joe to keep track. Now, I would add that moderators' mics, they need to be muted also after a question. Why? Because it's obvious the liberal media, they'd love to be 2-on-1 versus Donald Trump. No, that can't happen. Nor should networks be allowed to put anything on the screen but the names of the candidates, because they might try to hurt Donald Trump that way and participate that way. No go. And while we're at it, there should be no notes, no teleprompters, Joe. In other words, Joe, you don't get giant cheat sheets telling you where to stand and how to say hello and how to say goodbye. Meanwhile, Biden's 4th demand is that he's only willing to debate on only 4 liberal Biden-friendly news outlets. His choice, ABC, CBS, Telemundo, and fake news CNN. In response, Trump told Fox News this: I'm ready to go. The dates they proposed are fine, anywhere, anytime, any place. Let's see if Joe can make it to the stand-up podium. And Trump even agreed to hold the first debate on fake news CNN, a network filled with dishonest left-wing hacks we know who hate him. Now, this includes Dana Bash and fake Jake Tapper, who are now tasked, they say, with moderating the debate. Let me stop right here. I'm sorry, but the media mob and Joe Biden, I'll say it again, they don't get to collude and choose radical Biden-supporting hosts in the moderator's chair. Nice try, though. That means no fake Jake Tapper. Tapper is a radical, left-wing, partisan talk show host that masquerades as a journalist. Now, Fake Jake, let's look at his career. It started as the press secretary for a Pennsylvania Democrat. Then he worked for a D.C. public relations firm and a gun control group named Handgun Control, Inc. Tapper even had a stint at the radical far-left publication Salon.com before eventually making his way to fake news CNN, where all of a sudden now he wants to be called and considered a journalist. Make no mistake, Fake Jake Tapper might be a lot of things. He's no journalist. And like everyone else in the media mob, Tapper spent the last several years obsessively hating all things Donald Trump, even retweeting a comment from a notorious Trump hater calling Trump, quote, 100% insane. Tapper said the tweet is noteworthy, but that's not all. You decide.
As we watch Donald Trump attempt to turn his arrest and indictment into some sort of campaign commercial, the folks in the control room, I don't need to see any more of that. He's trying to turn this in. He's trying to turn it into a spectacle, into a campaign ad. That's enough of that. We've seen it already. Here he is right now under my voice. You hear him repeating his anti-immigrant rhetoric. President Trump, now in quarantine, has become a symbol of his own failures. He is running the single most negative, sleazy campaign in American history for a major party candidate. If you were to open up a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf, you would find the Nazi leader describing the mixing of non-Germans with Germans as poisoning. There's really no other way to say it. Donald Trump's language mirrors this directly. He pushes the government of the United States to use its power and credibility to justify his lies.
Does that sound like a journalist or a talk show host with very liberal leanings? To be clear, Joe Biden will already be debating in friendly territory with moderators who want him to win. Fake Jake is disqualified. And by the way, the media mob, the Biden campaign alone, do not get to collude and decide if Donald Trump is willing to go on a liberal network, then everyone must agree on who moderates. Not much more, to choose from there, but they'll find somebody. Maybe Dana Bash will be all right. I don't know. Otherwise, Joe will lie with impunity. And while Trump will be forced to debate Biden and the liberal talk show hosts at CNN, stop, take that off the air. He's lying. Oh, okay. Well, that's the person you want to moderate? Biden's list of demands will also be in effect, and I have no doubt that jacked up Joe will probably return to the stage after a heavy dose of, caffeine, Red Bull, or whatever he took before the State of the Union. That was weird. Don't expect a walk in the park. Anyway, by Biden, the media mob, excluding Trump from any input is beyond unfair. It is beyond insulting. They know that Trump and his team won't just bow at their altar and agree to only one-sided terms negotiated likely in secret beforehand. Joe, even announced this thing. They probably were all discussing it, knowing that, if we just agree, he'll have to do what we say. It's going to be Joe's way or the highway. But what he's really trying to do here is ultimately, maybe he's really cowering away from any real debate. Either take my chosen liberal network with my chosen moderator, with all my rules, or I'm not going to debate, secretly hoping that Donald Trump insists on basic fairness so they can duck and dodge and cower and hide and say, see, we tried to debate. Let's see, the American people, they deserve a fair debate. They deserve 3 fair debates at least. Maybe Joe Biden just isn't up to a fair debate. Just this morning, he tripped again as he barely shuffled onto the stage in front of the Capitol. This after last night's disastrous exit after a speech. And earlier this week, he seemingly needed directions how to get back to the White House after a short speech outside. Nancy Pelosi, other top Democrats, are begging Biden, don't debate Trump. He doesn't have a choice. Look at your screen. Latest poll, New York Times, Trump up by 12, Nevada. He didn't win Nevada in 2016 or 2020. Up by 10 in Georgia, 7 Michigan, 7 Arizona, 3 in Pennsylvania. If that holds, it is game over for Biden. And according to prominent Democratic strategist James Carville, I've debated him. I actually like him. I don't agree with the thing he says. Joe Biden's in big trouble. Everything they're throwing at Trump ain't working. Take a look.
And Trump's more ahead than he's ever been. It's going the wrong way. It's not working. Everything that we're throwing is spaghetti at a wall, and none of it is sticking, me included.
So far, none of the cheap political ploys have worked. Not the identity politics, not the fear-mongering, not the lying about the economy or the border. The left's sloppy lawfare campaign is actually making Trump more popular. And you can forget about Biden's policies improving his poll numbers. They have been an unmitigated disaster. So now these debates are almost like a Hail Mary for the Biden campaign, which is a pretty tough pill to swallow for the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. Take a look.
So should we see this sudden offer from the president to debate as a signal that you guys realize you need to change the subject after some really bad polling?
You know, we had a back and forth on polling yesterday. I just don't want to get into polling, any more details on polling. As it relates to the debate, you got to talk to the campaign about it. That is a question for the campaign, and I'm sure they are eager to answer your questions, Peter.
Democrats, Biden are desperate, but this race is far from over. 173 days away. There's nothing the left won't do to win an election. Think about it. They'll even trot out Joe Biden to a debate stage. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.